أعوذ بالله السميع العليم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters in Islam. Welcome to this session where Dr. Mustafa Awalu will present a paper on the impact of Islamic psychology on Muslim mental health. And this paper is one of the series of papers usually presented by the International Institute of Islamic Thought, Nigeria office, as coordinated by Professor Salis Shehu, the national coordinator of the IIIT. The lecture will be of about 45 minutes to 1 hour, and it will expose us to the Islamic psychology dimension of what we call the modern psychology, which has its roots from the philosophical issues of the 14th to 15th and up to 19th century AD. Before we start, we have to call on Malam Musa Isa Muhammad to open the floor with recitation from the Holy Quran. Malam Musa, you can start.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. واذكر في الكتاب مريم إذ انتبذت من أهلها مكانا شرقيا فاتخذت من دونهم حجابا فأرسلنا إليها روحنا فتمثل لها بشرا سويا قالت إني أعوذ بالرحمن منك إن كنت تقيا قال إنما أنا رسول ربك لأهب لك غلاما زكيا قالت أنى يكون لي غلام ولم يمسسني بشر ولم أك بغيا قال كذلك قال ربك هو علي حين ولنجعله آية للناس ورحمة منا وكان أمرا مقضيا فحملته فانتبذت به مكانا قصيا فأجاءها المخاض إلى جذع النخلة قالت يا ليتني مت قبل هذا وكنت نسيا منسيا فناداها من تحتها ألا تحزني قد جعل ربك تحتك سريا وهزي إليك بجذع النخلة تساقط عليك رطبا جنيا فكلي واشربي وقري عينا فإما ترين من البشر أحدا فقولي إني نذرت للرحمن صوما فلن أكلم اليوم إنسيا فأتت به قومها تحمله قالوا يا مريم لقد جئت شيئا فريا ويا أخت هارون ما كان أبوك امرأ سوء وما كانت أمك بغيا فأشارت إليه قالوا كيف نكلم من كان في المهد صبيا قال إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا وجعلني مباركا أينما كنت وأوصاني بالصلاة والزكاة ما دمت حيا وبرا بوالدتي ولم يجعلني جبارا شقيا والسلام علي يوم ولدت ويوم أموت ويوم أبعث حيا ذلك عيسى بن مريم قول الحق الذي فيه يمترون ما كان لله أن يتخذ من ولد سبحانه إذا قضى أمرا فإنما يقول له كن فيكون وإن الله ربي وربكم فاعبدوه هذا صراط مستقيم. صدق الله.
Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much. For the purpose of introduction of this lecture, we have to first of all welcome our teachers, our colleagues, our mentors to this August occasion. And you see, we are going to discuss issues that have to do with how Islamic psychology really impacted on Muslims' mental health. As you may be aware, in the previous years, when the actual Western psychology is emanating as a specific or professional course of study, there are issues as the course is being evolved into actually how it is now popular. But in all the issues, one thing that was very popular and which people that are against psychology as a course are usually occurring is the metaphor that psychology is a subject or is a profession that actually is able to remove people from -8 to 0, but is also again incapable of taking people from 0 to the next level or to even +8. Psychology may have failed to deliver person from positivity 1 to positivity 8 because it lacks, in some instances, what we now call inputs from the Islamic perspectives. So this lecture is going to take us from that -8 to 0 and then lead us from 0 to +8. What we are trying to say is that we are bringing psychology into complete perspectives, not just the Western psychology as we know it, but the Islamic psychology that has been there for centuries, far before what we now see as Western psychology. Mustafa Awalu is PhD candidate in Cairo University, studying psychology as a course. He had his own master's in educational psychology from the same Cairo University, and a degree in education from Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, and a national certificate in education from Federal College of Education, Ghana. He is an active member of the National Nigerian Association of Educational Psychologists. He is also an active member of various professional bodies. Mustafa Awalu is the Deputy Director of Mobilization and Outreach at International Institute of Islamic Thought, Nigeria. He is also a teacher by excellence, having taught adolescent psychology, developmental psychology, and the whole gamut of educational psychology in various institutions of higher learning in Kano here. From him now today, we will hear the Islamic perspective. And as you may be aware, in the previous years, we are having issues of mental health everywhere in our school. The Simbuka syndrome in the 90s, the Ermero in our girls' secondary schools, and many other mental disorders and mental problems that are visible in our society, which psychology in actual sense is trying to bring solutions. Mustafa I will now take on for 45 minutes maximum, and then we will entertain comments and questions and then observations on the paper. Mustafa Walu, Bismillah, can take over.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, may the peace and blessings of Almighty Allah be upon our Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his companions, his righteous and sincere believers. Before I start my presentation, I would have started by extending my appreciation to the board of directors of the Triple IT, particularly to the coordinator in person of Professor Salisu Shehu, whom I have appointed of his writing while writing my paper. May Almighty Allah increase him in all the good of soul and hereafter. Once again, I also extend my appreciation to the moderator, that is Sayaw Ahmad Farah from School of Continuing Education, Bayero University, Kano, for accepting the moderate decision and also accepting to discuss my paper. I thank you very much. May Almighty Allah increase me in knowledge and wisdom. The title of my presentation is Islamic Psychology, a Psychtherapy for enhanced Muslim mental health. This is the paper that I am going to present today. And my presentation is going to be based on number of outlines. It is going to be based on 8 outlines. Outline number 1, introduction, definition of conventional and Islamic psychology, differences between conventional and Islamic psychology, concepts of mental health, concept of man from an Islamic perspective, why to approach mental health from an Islamic perspective, goal in the life of a Muslim, mental health psychotherapy Islamic perspective, and then I will conclude my presentation with recommendations and then conclusion. Whenever we talk about psychology, we are trying to talk about a discipline that is concerned with the study of human mind, how it works, and how it might affect behavior. Psychology can also be referred as a body of knowledge which can be used to understand events, treat mental health issues, improve education, relationship, and promote the entire well-being of an individual. The knowledge of psychology helps in many areas, such as in the area of decision-making, avoiding stressful situations, setting and achieving goals, leads to a happy and effective living. Psychology, as a field of study, has been applied in many areas, applied in many disciplines, such as education, health, politics, business, etc., etc. The application of psychology in these areas of study make the areas to be made in terms of application and make the people of the area to be more responsible, more determined, and make better decisions whenever it comes into their own way. While mental health, most of the time when we talk about mental health, people think that mental health is only related to the health sector, but rather mental health has to do with physiological and psychological well-being of an individual. Recently in our society all over the world, there is an increased concern by government, public and non-governmental organizations with regards to the rampant cases of mental illness. That is why government and non-governmental organizations have initiated different programs and policies that was aimed at promoting the mental health of the people. For this reason, Mental Health Action Plan, which was developed by World Health Organization, and it was expected to cover a period of 7 years, that is 2013 to 2020. As at 2016, the report indicates that more than 800 persons, which account for 75%, died annually as a result of one form of mental illness or the other. This figure is significantly in showing that mental health in our society has become rampant to the extent that more than 75% of the world population is increased in one way or the other. And this can be justified with the rate of increasing crime in our society, because hardly a day passes without reports on any of the medias, either from electronic media, indicate one form of activity or the other was committed as a result of mental illness that is affecting general populace. And for this reason, Islamic psychology terms rescue the challenge that modern man is experiencing. While Islam is a pluralistic religion, when we say something pluralistic, we are trying to clarify that it's a religion that centers in the belief of one God, and it has to do with total submission to the will and commandment of Allah. Islam, the word itself, originated from an Arabic word, and from that word Islam, 3 words came into existence. That is Istilam, which has to do with surrender, salam, peace, and salama, purity. Therefore, if a person fully surrenders himself or herself to Almighty Allah alone and worship Him purely, she only will live in peace, not only in this world, but also in the hereafter. Based on the earlier introduction that I made, presently Muslims throughout the world are facing challenges and crises that give rise to multitude of mental health concerns. For this reason, there is going to be need for an approach, because it was trying to portray that the conventional approach toward promoting the mental health of human has been failed. That is why, or it seems to be not effective, because on a daily basis the cases is increasing in geometric progression, not in an arithmetic progression. Many Muslims feel like of not to go and seek psychotherapeutic services from psychotherapists, because they think that the psychotherapy is not religiously oriented. And for this reason, there is need for an approach that psychotherapy that will honor, that will be guided and will be drawn from the Islamic, from the Muslims' religious orientation, and also from the Muslim, either from the Quran or Hadith, which can be used to promote the mental health of the people. For this reason, Islamic psychology have a potential contribution toward Islamic understanding of the person as a well-articulated, developed path towards spiritual, moral, and mental health of an individual. And now I will continue my presentation by defining psychology from the conventional and also from the Islamic perspective. The word psychology was originated from 2 Greek words that were coined together to give the word psychology, psych and logos. These are the 2 Greek words that was psychology first originated. And the word psych means soul, while logos means study. Originally, psychology was defined as the study of soul. Century later, then psychology changes from definition from study of human soul to the study of human spirit. Centuries later also, psychology changes to the study of mind and mental processes. At that stage, then the scholars of that time think that mind is something that is metaphysics. It cannot be seen. And if you cannot be able to see things, then you cannot be able to measure it objectively. That is why the scholars as at that time argued that if you cannot see things and you cannot measure it, so you cannot say something objectively about it. From there on, psychology keep on metamorphosing from one form to another, from one form to another, from one form to another, up to the present time, where psychology is defined as the scientific study of behavior. Quote unquote, it only restricted itself to the study of overt behavior. That is why Al-Hashimi 1977 in Shehu has provided a more clear descriptions about the study of psychology. He said that More than 1,000 years ago, psychology study began with speculations about soul. Centuries later, it moved into the inquiry into the nature of the soul. Century later, it moves into the study of mental processes. Later on, it moves into the study of human consciousness. And then it also changes to the study of unconsciousness. As at now, psychology, or rather conventional psychology, concentrate only on overt behavior. And if that is the case, then psychology keep on metamorphosing from one form to another. Then probably there's tendency in the next centuries to come, psychology will also change into another form. He also continued by saying that that is Al-Hashimi, 1977 in Shehu, 1995 said that psychology first lost its soul, then later on psychology lost its mind, then its feeling, consciousness, and unconsciousness, and what reserved for psychology as at now is its overt behavior. As I said earlier, there is probability for conventional psychology to be changing from one time to the other as a result of maybe toward the extreme edge of my presentation. Each and every of the participants will be convinced why it is that I said that there is probability for conventional psychology to be changing. Now, Islamic psychology. When we talk about Islamic psychology, I'm trying to talk about a psychology that is centered based on Muslim religious ideas. A psychology that is centered based on Muslim religious ideas. So also Islamic psychology has been defined by Muslim scholars based on their perception of the concept. Hussein, as at 2006, defined Islamic psychology as a study involving theoretical integration and practical application of Islamic principles concerning guidance and counseling, personality development, therapy, positive health, and many other areas that will promote the entire well-being of an individual. This is a comprehensive definition that was provided by Hussein as at 2016. From this definition, we will agree that Islamic psychology is trying to provide a holistic study of man. So also Muhammad 2009 defined Islamic psychology as a psychology that involves the study of mind, behavior, and spiritual well-being of a Muslim based on Quran and Sunnah. Another excellent definition that was provided by Muhammad, a psychology that is based on the study of mind, that is based on the study of behavior, that is aimed at promoting the well-being of an individual. Even if to say there are some constraints that has not been mentioned from this definition, provided that it is going to promote the well-being of an individual, then it happens to be a target of Islamic psychology. That is what this definition is trying to portray. From these two definitions that I provided, the definition of psychology from the conventional and also the definition of psychology from the Islamic perspective, each and every of the participants will agree with me that differences exist between conventional and Islamic psychology. Yes, there are a number of differences, but for the purpose of this presentation, I will only restrict myself to only two differences. Differences number one, concept of man from the Islamic psychology is holistic. That is, Islamic psychology tries to provide a comprehensive and encompassing study of man, both the physical, the social, emotional, intellectual, psychological, and spiritual. Islamic psychology targeted at providing a holistic approach in the study of mind, while conventional psychology regards toward a specific aspect of man. If you can see from the two definitions that have been provided, that is what makes the conventional psychology to be metamorphosing from one time to another. Because if to say some aspect has been considered as a particular century, then later on in another century, it also changes into another aspect. Later on, what reserved for conventional psychology as at now is overt behavior. So we don't know the specific aspect that is also going to be concentrated in the next centuries to come. This is the reason that I said there is tendency for conventional psychology to keep on metamorphosing again. But Islamic psychology, a comprehensive anything from the man, that if to say it has been studied, it will promote the entire well-being of an individual, then it is part of Islamic psychology. Both the physical, social, emotional, intellectual, psychological, and spiritual well-being of an individual. The second differences between conventional and Islamic psychology, it lies in the root of the sources. That is, Islamic psychology found its foundation from the Quran and Hadith. These are the two sources, the primary and the secondary sources. Anything that is going to be used, either with regard to psychotherapy, with regards to this, with regard to that, no matter what it is, provided it's going to promote the well-being, then the major constant, the major sources of reference for Islamic psychology is Quran and Hadith, while conventional psychology root of references provide us with man-made theories which came into existence as a result of observation, experimentation, and mere perception of an individual. These are the sources of conventional psychology. It provided with man-made theories as a result of observation and experimentation. Sometimes we tend to forget, the conventional psychologists tend to forget individual differences, belief differences, and cultural differences. There are many experiments from the conventional psychology that was done with a cat, that was done with a rat, that was done with a dog, while Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the glorious Quran have clearly said that man has been elevated among all the creators of Allah. And Muslim scholars have provided a reason why it is that man has been elevated. It was because of superb intellectual faculty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has endowed in man. In Surah Al-Isra, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has clearly said that we have honored the sons of Adam, provided with them transport on land and sea, give them for sustenance things good and pure, and conferred on them special favors upon a great part of our creation. Man has been elevated among all the creators of Almighty Allah. I see no reason, if man has been elevated among all the creators of Almighty Allah, then why it is that we can make an experimentation from imperial and then come and apply it upon the spiritual? Why not from the spiritual so that we can apply it upon the imperial? These are some of the weaknesses of the conventional psychology, that as a Muslim psychology, we should sit down and find out there are many gray areas. I am not trying to say that all from the conventional psychology are bad, and no, they are all good. They are neither bad, they are no good. But as a Muslim psychologist, we should sit down and try to fish out all these gritty area, all these gray area, all these nitty-gritty areas, so that it can suit based on the teachings of our religion. Which one is not suitable? What are those things that we can adapt as they are? And what are those that we can adopt with modification? And what are those from the conventional psychology that we will reject? These are some of the things that as a Muslim psychology, we need to sit down so as to provide a tangible solution from the Quran and Sunnah, so that psychotherapy, so that psychology in its entirety will promote the entire well-being of an individual. I don't think if I'm going to spend much time here, because only 45 minutes has been given to me by the moderator. And inshallah, I will do all what's within my own possible to see that I have covered what is expected for me to cover. Sometimes mental health, when we talk about mental health, is sometimes used interchangeably with psychic health. Not necessarily for us to see. There are synonyms, mental health and psychic health. So whenever a person is not mentally healthy, and the opposite of mental health is mental illness. If a person is not mentally healthy, then there is tendency for him to be experiencing one form of mental health issue, one form of mental illness or the other. There are some statistical indices that was provided by World Health Organization. I try to provide this skeleton so that towards the extreme of my presentation, then I am going to link it with what I'm going to provide the skeleton here, my extreme edge of presentation, then I will put the flesh on the skeleton. World Health Organization, as of 2019, provide these indices. They said that about 320 million people suffer from a mental or behavioral disorder. So also, about 150 million persons suffer from depression. Nearly 1 million suffers from hallucination. About 25 million suffer from schizophrenia. 38 million suffer from epilepsy, and more than 90 million suffer from an alcohol or drug disorder. This is a clear indication, as I have said earlier, that the issue of mental health is increasing in geometric progression. Each and every of the participants will be conceived just by looking at these indices, but probably later on, as I promised, when I come toward the extreme edge of my presentation, this is the skeleton. The flesh is coming. Shehu, 1995 defined mental health as a state of emotional stability by means of which the individual adjusts perfectly to his environment and responds positively to different stimuli. This is the definition. When an individual is mentally healthy, then he is emotionally satisfied, he is emotionally stable, and he adjusts perfectly to any environment that an individual finds himself. So also World Health Organization has defined mental health as at 2018, defined mental health as a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses
Wani ya sauka, za a nuno ma mutum ya dan sauka.
and can also make a contribution
Na ga yana connect.
on
Yana
the definition that was provided by World Health Organization. Now I will continue. What are the characteristics of a mentally healthy person? From our day-to-day interactions, we interact with many people. Then what are the characteristics that we are going to see in an individual? And when we see these characteristics, we are going to draw a general conclusion that person is mentally okay. Number one, objective judgment. When we talk about objective judgment, I am trying to talk that a person that is mentally healthy, whenever an issue comes into his way, he look at the issue accurately and squarely so as to arrive as an objective judgment, not a subjective judgment. Characteristics number two, enthusiastic and reasonable. A person that is mentally healthy seems to be enthusiastic and also seems to be reasonable, emotionally satisfied, respect for others, adaptability and resilient mind, socially adaptable, desires are in harmony with socially approved goal. These are some of the characteristics of a person who is mentally healthy. Concept of man from an Islamic perspective. This is another outline that I have to discuss upon. Whenever it seems like it is going to serve also as another dead blow to the conventional psychology. I said that conventional psychology concentrates on a specific aspect of man, while Islamic psychology provides a holistic approach in the study of man. That is why we have to look at it from the Islamic perspective. What is the concept of man from an Islamic perspective? From an Islamic perspective, man is made up of three aspects, and these three aspects can be distinguished, but it cannot be separated. So whenever you want to understand a person, you have to understand him holistically. These three aspects has to be understood fully so that you can be able to provide a psychotherapy to an individual. What are those aspects? There is what we call dysmia aspect. This is aspect number one. And dysmia aspect has to do with the biological and physical organ of human device, which can be used to test for feeling, pain, hunger, and sexual pleasure. Anything that is related with physical organ of human device constitute upon dysmia aspect of an individual. Next is nafsiya aspect, which has to do with the overall quality of a man, which can be explained in the form of thought, feeling, will, and freedom. The existence of nafsiya aspect happens to be in between dysmia and ruhiya aspect. It has to do with the mental and psychological content of man. The last concept of man from an Islamic perspective is ruhiya aspect, which has to deal with the spiritual potential of the human mind. Spiritual potential of the human mind. These are the three aspects from the Quran that whenever you want to understand a person, you have to look at him objectively. You have to look at him squarely from these three perspectives. That is jismiya, nafsiya, and ruhiya aspect. Why do we think that mental health has to be approached from an Islamic perspective? Why? What is the rationale that we think that I think that mental health has to be approached from an Islamic perspective? Mental sanity, maturity, and intellectual development are two areas that early Muslim scholars have written extensively on it. And many Muslim scholars have said that they have written extensively on it because there happens to be a prerequisite or precondition for an individual to engage in any form of obligatory act. Before an individual can engage in any form of obligatory act, he has to be mentally sound, he has to be fully matured, and he also has to be intellectually developed. That is why early Muslim scholars have written extensively on these areas. In Islam, no one is obliged to undertake any form of obligatory activity unless he or she is mentally sound, is physically, is fully matured, and also is intellectually developed. The hadith of our holy prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam will confirm this assertion, where it was reported that the pen for recording deeds has been suspended from 3 persons. Who are they? An insane until he regains sanity, a child until he attains maturity, and a sleeper until he wakes up. This is a clear indication that in one way or the other, all the content of this hadith has a direct link with the mental health of the people. Not only the hadith of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, also there is a verse from the glorious Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have said it clearly that in Surah Al-Ma'idah verse 90, Ya ayyuhal lazina amanu innamal khamru wal maisir wal ansabu wal azlamu rijsan min amali shaitan fajtanibuhu la'allakum tuflihun. This is a clear indication that Almighty Allah has prohibited alcohol and any other form of intoxicant, because whenever an individual takes them, it has a direct linkage with his mental sanity. That is why under no any condition, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly in the glorious Quran has condemned any form of intoxicant and alcohol so as the mental health of an individual. Then if to say whenever an individual will engage in any obligatory act, he has to be mentally sound, then I think there is need for us to approach mental health from an Islamic perspective so that all our obligatory acts will be accepted. Yes, it has to be accepted if we are fully, if we are in a state of mentally sound, if we are in a state of mentally sanity, so that our obligatory act will also be accepted. Next item, next outline from my presentation is goal in the life of a Muslim. This term, it has to be goal in the life of a Muslim psychologist. It seems to be like a clarion call to all the psychologists that as a Muslim, we should always remember that we had been created for a purpose and we have a goal that we intended to achieve in this world and the hereafter. The most important goal that we intend to achieve is for us to receive as much blessing as Almighty, as much blessing from Almighty Allah, not only in this world, but in this world and also in the hereafter. We had been created for a purpose. The basic responsibility of our creation, as said by Almighty Subhanahu wa Ta'ala in Surah Al-Zariyah, verse 56, is that وَمَا خَلَقْنَا الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. This is the basic goal of our creation. We have been created so that we can serve Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And we should also remember that we are the vicegerent of Allah. So also it was clearly said in Quran, Baqarah, verse 30, where Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala have said, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً قالوا أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك قال إني أعلم ما لا تعلمون. This is a clear indication that we are vicegerent of Allah. And if we are vicegerent of Allah, we should also remember that anything that we are going to do, we have to do it for the sake of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So also in Surah Al-An'am, by 61, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has confirmed this assertion, where Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala said, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسْكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. All what we are going to do in this world has to be for the sake of Almighty Allah. Not only that one, as a man being the special creation of Allah, then you carried a responsibility. And whenever you shouldered a responsibility, later or sooner, you are going to be accounted for that responsibility. Later or sooner, you are going to be accounted for that responsibility. For this reason, whenever you carried a responsibility, later or sooner you are going to be accountable for that responsibility. We had been created for a purpose. We should also remember that we are from Allah, and Allah is our final destination. Whatever we are going to do in this world, we are going to account it on the day of judgment, because it It has already been stated. We have a responsibility. And whenever we have a responsibility, then we are going to be accountable for it. We should also remember, as a Muslim psychologist, when we help our client, it's as important as we are helping ourselves, because they are our fellow men. So when we guide them based on the knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, when we guide other people, it seems like as important as we are also helping ourselves. For this reason, as a Muslim psychologist, we should do all what we can toward our means to see that we have promoted a comprehensive personality. That jismiya, that ruhiya, and nasfiya and nafsiya aspect has to be promoted entirely as a Muslim psychologist. Not only that one, as a Muslim psychologist, we have a role to play towards maqasidi sharia. There are 5 objectives of sharia, and they are the protection of deen, that is Islam, protection of nafs, self, protection of aqal, mind, protection of mal, wealth, the protection of nasal, offspring. From all the definitions of psychology that I have read earlier, they are going around, they are revolving within the human mind. And you see, the protection of human akal is one of the objectives of Sharia. So this should serve as a goal that we as a Muslim psychologist, we are trying to promote, we are trying to provide a psychotherapy that will the entire well-being of an individual. Ideally, this should be considered as a prerequisite for the practicing Muslim psychologist, the achievement of 5 elements of al-maqasid sharia. Therefore, the role of a Muslim psychologist is to assist his clients in trying to achieve these goals in order to reach the state of psychological well-being. Factors to consider for mental health psychotherapy. Are there any factors that we have to consider when it comes to the issue of mental health psychotherapy? Yes, there are. Many early Muslim scholars, as I have said earlier, have written extensively with regards to the issue of mental health psychotherapy. That is why the conventional approach of psychotherapy fell. What are those factors that we have to consider? According to Keshavarzi and Hakim, explore that there are 4 factors that has to be considered if you really want to promote the psychotherapy, if you really want to promote the mental health of an individual. What are those aspects? They are qalb, ruh, aqal, and nerves. These are the 4 aspects that was clearly stated, but I don't think if I'm going to spend much time describing them, but inshallah the paper will be sent through your emails, and when it has been sent to you, then you can read over and over. Hamza and Aki, also another Muslim psychologist, another Muslim scholar, has provided 3 aspects that has to be considered whenever you want to provide a psychotherapy for an individual. What are those aspects? He said you have to consider aqidah, you have to consider ibadah, and you have to consider akhlaq. These are the 3 aspects that has to be considered based on Hamza and Akil. While Abu Ra'iya, who is also another Muslim scholar, he said that whenever an individual comes to you, you have to identify the inner conflict. You have to first of all identify what is the inclination between the good and the bad, the inner conflict that an individual is experiencing. This happens to be one of the most important area based on Abu Ra'iya that has to be considered whenever a client comes to you, provided he is experiencing one form of mental illness or the other. Mental health psychotherapy and Islamic perspective. This happens to be closely, or I can say happens to be the last, or probably next to the last item of my presentation. Mental health psychotherapy and Islamic perspective. Happiness is a condition of mental health that has to do with serene, calm, and gratitude to Almighty Allah. If you have not achieved this, it clearly shows that you have not achieved a condition of mental health, but rather you have only achieved a haphazardly success. So when you want to achieve you have to achieve happiness in this world, you have to be mentally sound so that you can be able to undertake any obligatory act that was prescribed by Almighty Allah in the glorious Quran and through many of his teachings that we have received from our holy prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There are three methods for the purpose of discussion, of this discussion, that I am going to discuss which happens to be the way from the Islamic perspective that can be used to promote the mental health of an individual. Number one, dhikr or supplication happens to be the first method that can be used to promote the mental health of an individual. Whenever we talk about dhikr, it's an Arabic word which means remembrance, and dhikr constitute or a person that engages himself in frequent remembrance is referred to as what? Dhikr. Therefore, dhikr has to do with expression of praise and prayers which is being repeated by an individual either silently or aloud with the use of prayer bead or with use of his fingers happens to be one of the effective way that was suggested by Muslim scholars that if fully been effected will probably promote the mental health of the people. Not only as proposed by Muslim scholars, there are verses from the glorious Quran that are trying to testify dhikr, frequent remembrance of Allah, as one of the way that method that mental health of an individual can be promoted. For example, in Surah Al-Rad, verse 28, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have said, "Alladhina amanu wa tatma'innu qulubuhum bi dhikrillah, ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub." This is a clear verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to testify that it was through frequent remembrance of Allah that a person's mental sanity will be promoted. Not only in this verse, there is another verse also in Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have said that, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu dhkurullaha kathiran. O you who believe, keep on remembering Allah. And whenever Allah directed us to keep on remembering him, then definitely there is a benefit from that remembrance. That is why Islamic scholars has pondered on this verse and draw a general conclusion that frequent remembrance of Allah promote the mental sanity of an individual. This is from the Quran. And then from the hadith of our holy prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there are a number of dhikr that the prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was reported in a number of hadith that he used to recite whenever he experienced one form of emotional distress or aggrievedness, where it was reported that when the prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was seized by distress, he used to recite La ilaha illallahul azim, La ilaha illallahu rabbul arshil azim, Allahu rabbus samawati sab'i, wa rabbul arshil kareem. These are some of the dhikr that was reported that whenever Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was seized by distress, he used to recite this. So also, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saddened, he used to read Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyumu bi rahmatika astaghith. When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is seized by sadden, he used to recite Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyumu bi rahmatika astaghisu. This happens to be one of the way which was proposed by Muslim scholars. Not only the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to recite when his companions are experiencing one form of psychological disturbances or the other. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has also proposed some dhikr that they are going to recite, which will be used to promote the mental health of them. We can remember the hadith of Abu Umamata, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam entered into the mosque, and when he entered into the mosque, he find him in a state of depression. Then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked him, "Oh Abu Umamata, why are you in the mosque?" He replied to our holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that I had been seized by sadness, grief. Then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Should I teach you something that when you read it in the morning and at the evening, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will wipe away your problem?" He said, "Oh Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, teach me." Then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam teach him this dhikr so that he can be reciting, by which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will wipe out his sadness, his grief and prostration. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-hammi wal hazan, wa a'udhu bika min al-ajz wal khazay, wa a'udhu bika min al-jubn wal bukhi, wa a'udhu bika min galabati ad-dayn wa ghayr wa ahrul rijal. This is the dhikr that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam teach Abu Umamata so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will wipe away. This is a clear indication that dhikr happens to be one of the effective methods which can be used to promote the mental health of an individual. The second method that I am going to discuss, which will be one of the way also through which mental health can be promoted, is Quran recitation. Quran happens to be a holy book that was revealed by Almighty Allah to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam through Angel Jibril. And Quran happens to be one of the guider, happens to be one of the guider of one of the mankind guide. And for this reason, it's not only serving as a guider to mankind, but it happens to be a healer of many heart disease that an individual is experiencing, that a man is experiencing, which in one way or the other is directly related with the mental health of an individual. So also from the Quran, there are some verses that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have clearly testified Quran as a healer of many heart disease, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have said in Surah Al-Isra, verse 82, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have said, وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ وَلَا يَزِيدُ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا خَسَارًا. This is a clear indication that Quran has been revealed as a healer of many heart disease. And heart disease in one way or the other has a direct effect with the mental health of an individual. So also in another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also said it in Surah Yunus, verse 57. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have said, Ya ayyuhan nasu qad ja'akum maw'idatun min rabbikum wa shifaa'un lima fi suduri wa hudan wa rahmatan lil mu'minin. Then Quran has been revealed as a source of healing many heart disease that a modern man is experiencing. Not only Quran, not only these verses that I am read, also the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has testified by his companion that whenever he's experiencing one form of aggrievedness or the other, he used to engage himself in Quran recitation. So according to Badri, 1979 in Shehu, has reported that not only for an individual to engage himself in reciting Quran happens to be a way by which mental health can be promoted, but reciting the melodious Quran happens to be one of the effective way also which can be used. Even if you are not reciting, listening to the melodious recitation of glorious Quran happens to be one of the effective way that mental health of an individual can be promoted. The last method which can be used to promote the mental health of the people is prayer. And prayer happens to be the third pillar of Islam, and it was prescribed by Almighty Allah as an obligatory act upon every Muslim. That is the clear guidance. It has been prescribed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a clear rule. It has been prescribed as an obligatory act upon every Muslim because there is spiritual salvation in the prayer. Not only apart from the spiritual salvation, many Muslim scholars have written extensively that prayer promotes not only the spiritual salvation, but it promotes the entire mental health of an individual. And among all the two methods that I have listed earlier, that is Quran, recitation, and dhikr, prayer happens to be the most effective one. This is because in prayer there is dhikr, there is also Quranic recitation. Apart from this, also a person engages himself in certain form of exercise, which has been confirmed by medical scientists, by medical doctors, that when an individual engages himself in such exercise, there is tendency for him to promote the entire well-being. Even if to say from the conventional psychology, they have also agreed that the movement that an individual, we prostrate, we do this, we do that while we are praying, happens to be one of the effective methods that can be used to promote the mental health of an individual. So also from the glorious Quran, there is a verse that was revealed by Almighty Allah, which justifies prayer as one of the effective methods for promoting the mental health of an individual. In Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 153, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have said that, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sta'inu bis-sabri was-salat. O you who believe, keep on praying. O you who believe, seek help with patience, perseverance, and prayer, for Allah is with those who patiently persevere. The companions of our holy prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has also reported that whenever he is disturbed, that is our holy prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he rushed to prayer. These are the three effective methods which I think from the Islamic perspective that can be used to promote the mental health of an individual. And based on this finding, I have tried to come out with a number of recommendations. Recommendation number one, psychotherapists at all levels should equally emphasize psychotherapy based on the mind, body, and spirit. That is, whenever an individual comes to you as a psychologist experiencing one form of problem or the other, you should try as much to see that you have provided a psychotherapy to him based on nafsiya, ruhiya, and jismiya aspect. These are the three components that are integrated in man. So whenever a person comes to you experiencing a problem, we should try as much as possible to see that we have provided a psychotherapy that will promote the entire well-being of an individual. Second recommendation, curriculum and all learning activities in schools should be designed based on the comprehensive concept of human nature, which will cater for the total and balanced personality development of an individual. From the goal that I have read earlier, I have already made a clarion call to the psychologists that we should try as much as we can to see that we have promoted the entire personality of an individual. Last, Ministry of Education should pay greater emphasis and attention to the inculcation of correct and true concept of human nature in education. A man with such qualities will be of good to God, to himself, to others in the society. Yes, mental health problem is not only affecting the individual himself, but rather it has a significant impact on the entire society. So if a person is mentally healthy, it clearly shows that it was the society, it is the society that is entirely healthy. And for this reason, Ministry of Education should design curriculum that from the primary, from the kindergarten level up to the tertiary institution will center on the protection of human mind, of the human body and the human spirit, so that all the chaos that we are experiencing nowadays in our society, all the criminal activities that we are experiencing in our society will be reduced to the barest minimum. These are the three recommendations that I postulated. Finally, conventional psychology has failed to salvage man from the problem, from the mental health problem that he is experiencing. Thereby has left man within a state of anarchy with different form of mental illness. Each and every of the participants will agree with me that rampant cases that we are hearing from the medias, it will be convincible to us that definitely mental illness is getting ground in our society. And if necessary measures have not been taken, then there is tendency for it to keep on increasing, to the extent that it will become uncontrollable. And for this reason, we should do as much as we can to see that we have promoted the mental health of an individual. This is the reason why Islamic psychology came to salvage man from the mental health challenges that he is experiencing. We should also remember that a healthy soul will be able to produce a good heart. A good heart will develop wisdom. A wisdom will develop wonderful self. A wonderful self will develop a beautiful akhlaq, and a beautiful akhlaq will remain the best personality of a Muslim personality. With these few words, I am going to rest my case here. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. And it has come to a time where we will quickly and briefly discuss what has been delivered by Mustafa Awalu as far as this lecture is concerned. We can see that from the introductory aspect of the lecture to the end, the presentation, the presenter revolves around the conventional and Islamic aspects of psychology. And as I was saying earlier, these conventional aspects of psychology is what we call Western psychology that has just been developed in the last 200 years, while Islamic psychology has been there for centuries. We can see from the definition of mental health as provided by the researcher, it just states mental health is a state of emotional stability. In some years back, the whole idea of psychology revolves around topics like intelligence, topics like personality, topics like personality development, and areas of those aspects. Now, the psychology has developed a study of mind and a study of human behavior, study of the way we think, study of the way we act, study of the way we respond to situations, and study of the ways by which an individual can be fully and unfortunately developed. But you see, in all the studies, especially the Western studies that we are learning in our schools, a failure to understand that a man, actually, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created a man, has a complete personality of the Jismiya, as mentioned by Mustafa, Nafsiya, and Ruhiya. And that is why after the creation of man, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to stop and even praise himself. But Tabarakallahu Asrul Khaliqin, because the creation of man is far superior and more complex than the creation of any other creations made. And that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Tabarakallahu Asrul Khaliqin. In some other places, Allah says, Inna khalaqna al-insana fi ahsani taqwim. Now, that does not mean that the people who are we as individuals do not have our own issues and concerns and problems. And because of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep revealing to us processes by which we can psychologically improve ourselves. Dr. Mustafa has talked about emotional stability. And one thing that we should be very, very surprised about is that until some few years ago, the conventional psychology do not even make much reference to emotions. All we are talking about are issues of intelligence, who is more intelligent, who is not intelligent, how the intelligence, heredity, environment, and then learning, how learning occurs. But in reference, because in fact we have been studying psychology for so many years, but the fundamental problems of man keeps repeating and increasing and multiplying, even while the study of psychology is expanding. And now the psychologists try to think, why are cases of mental health are increasing? Psychopathologies increasing. Why are issues of crime is increasing? Of course, we are studying psychology. We have so many psychologists, but the crime rate is increasing. Mental health problems are increasing. And why? Then psychologists say, okay, let us now study emotions. And now, in the last 20 years, we have studies of emotional intelligence, studies of emotional stability, study of emotional quotient, study of emotional regulation, studies of emotion dysregulations. Not knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already taken care of this completely in the Holy Quran and the Hadith in Nabi, thousands, hundreds of years ago. For example, as put forward by Mustafa, zikr, Allah bi zikr where there are tensions, where there are issues that somebody is becoming urge or is having urge to commit crime or to commit, then he has to put himself in the zikr, remembrance of Allah, reciting, then the prayer, then Quranic recitation, and all those things. But in addition to what Dr. Mustafa has said, you can see as postulated by modern psychologists. As postulated by modern psychologists, there are 6 basic emotions: the emotions of fear, anger, sadness, surprise, happiness, and disgust. Now, for someone to look at these basic emotions, 5 of them are negative emotions: sadness, fear, anger, disgust. And sometimes
da alama yes, kwarai da gaske.
Kan da inda zamu ga clear. Dan jure na sorry. So mu kujera gaba. Zai kuma background.
Kwarai da gaske.
Assalamu alaikum. You are still muted. We can't hear you. Oh my God. Somebody should inform him that, yeah, he's still muted.
Yes, sir, we are there.
But ita ce take magana ko? We can't hear you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you are back.
Oh, sorry. What I'm trying to say is that I'm trying to add to what Mala Mustafa Awal has just said. Maybe in the first 1-2 minutes I was offline. You are not hearing. What I'm saying is that at the end of the whole lecture, a solution was provided for what is to be done so that mental health of Muslims will be surely increased and maintained. And that he provided the zikr, prayers, and the recitation of the Holy Quran. And we are saying that the entire study of conventional or modern psychology until some 20 years ago revolves around issues that has nothing or little to do with personal individuals' emotions. And now they are saying that emotion is the ultimate alpha and omega of mental health. And therefore mental health is a state of emotional stability. So I want to draw a connecting line between emotions and mental health, and then add to what Dr. Mustafa has said about zikr, prayer, and Quranic recitation. And I want to add the fact that the Holy Quran, in so many places, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has enjoined people to be very patient, to be calm. That is why I quoted where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was saying that those that can overcome sadness and anger, then those that can have pity on people. Now, this quality, in addition to the three that Mustafa has provided, is a way by which someone can control and regulate his emotion. And where human emotions cannot be regulated, then certainly gradually issues of psychopathologies and mental illness will be creeping because the person cannot control or regulate his emotions. And in 6 basic emotions, anger and sadness appear very prominent. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already given us psychotherapy for anger and sadness. And another thing is that we now look at our society, especially our family life. We can, especially in this part of the country, where you can have children having several mental issues, including all those, the Sumbuka syndrome, the Ermero, all this Aljanu and such things that we have been talking about for so many years. But then, what will be the solution for those things? Zikr, prayers, Quranic recitations, control of anger and sadness, and then giving to the needy individuals, and importantly, trying to maintain a very happy family life so that which will bring very good attachment for the children. And that one has been mentioned uncountable numbers in the Holy Quran and the Hadith. And for our society where divorce is rampant, with all its psychological, educational, economic consequences, we can see that in the Holy Quran, even where in Surah Al-Talaq, where the first verse, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been talking about when you divorce, or you intend to divorce women, he brings provisions and then rules of that. And before he has even gone far, he said, وَتِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ وَمَن يَتَعَدَّ حُدُودَ اللَّهِ فَقَدْ ظَلَمَ نَفْسَهُ. Then he said, these are rules and regulations and guide from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and whoever transgresses about these rules has already forsaken himself. And this part of the verse has so much consequences as to what is happening to the mental health of our children, mental health of us ourselves, and all those things. So this will be my only contribution and a discussion on the paper. But what is important is that this paper is rich. This paper has opened our mind and heart about what it's all about Islamic psychology, and it is hoped that we will get the complete paper and distributed. With this, we will open the floor for questions and observations, and the presenter will provide answers, and that will take us about 10 to 15 minutes before the vote of thanks by Dr. Dukawa. I think someone is raising his hand here. Let's hear what he's going to say. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Hello.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay. Assalamu
alaikum. Now I have seen someone has asked a question about he wants more explanation about the concept of Jismiya, Nafsiya, and Ruhiya, and I hope the presenter has noted that question and will respond to it. Now, the person that is raising hand, and can you hear me? Assalamu alaikum. I think I cannot hear him. I don't know whether someone is Now, it's like we have to respond to the questions of the, yes. Idris Alice Rogo is also raising hand, and then Techno 2 is raising hands.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Wa alaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. We can hear you.
I really appreciate the presentation, and I am glad to hear and to be educated on this very important aspect. My own is just a call. There are virgin areas in psychology that we Muslims, we don't indulge in. There is the need for us to look into that. For instance, in the modern psychology, we don't have a space in the issue of all this jinn and what have you. And in Islamic perspective of it, we have solutions to all these problems. There is the need for us to try as much as possible to write as much papers, much articles as possible in this area, because in the modern psychology, we don't have something like Bugun Al-Jani and what have you, and traditionally and Islamically, we have it, and we have been using Islamic solutions to solve the problem. And I think it's high time that we come up with presentations, positions, and articles that address this problem for the betterment. I think I raised my question.
Thank you so much. This is a challenge to all of us in the aspects of the areas of psychology, and we will take it up. And I hope the presenter is.
Okay. Okay,
Hello.
Hello?
Yeah, we are next.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Good morning, Doctor, and the entire house. Actually, mine is to, support and congratulate the presenter for his wonderful presentations. And I feel delighted with his presentations. And what I would just demand
Okay. We can hear you.
because I have been following the presentation right from the scratch, whole book. I know the presenter can do that for us because the content of the paper touch the whole life of human beings. Because the way he have made mention of contributions of Islamic psychology in terms of the psychotherapy to a Muslim is inevitable. So I wanted the presenter to see a way, if it's possible, to make the paper into a book and to let us know a way. Though I know he said that he would try and send the paper to our various emails. So I wanted the presenter to look for a possibility to make the paper to become a book. I believe he can do that. And with your support, Doctor, I know the thing can be possible in a short period of time. So this is what I would just request from the presenter. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Then we still have someone raising hand.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. Walaikum assalam. Walaikum assalam. Walaikum assalam.
Yawwa. And I have said good then.
Yeah,
You can go ahead. We can hear you. Walaikum assalam. It's like we have lost the voice.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
I would like to start by commending the host and the presenter. So thank you for the job well done.
Thank you so much.
My question is, I have a question.
Yeah, ask your question.
Hello?
Hello.
My question is, hello?
We can hear you.
My question is, what role do psychologists, both Islamic and conventional psychologists, play in containing security in Nigeria?
Okay. Now, we will answer that question.
Hello? Do you hear me?
I have heard your questions. What role do psychology play, or psychologists play in containing insecurity in Nigeria? Now, any other question?
Yes, that is my question.
Thank you so much. We will answer that question. The presenter will say something about it. Now, we have 3 questions, and there is one that was asked via the comment. The message was sent about the Nafsia and Jismia and Ruhia, the 3 indivisible parts of human life. Now, let's go quickly back to the presenter to give us more insight about the questions raised. The presenter.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah once again for being part of the program so that I can be able to answer some of the questions that was asked by the participants. I have to first of all appreciate the effort for you to answer this question so that I can be able to improve the paper First of all, there is a question that was asked by my mentor in person of Dr. Ismail. He said that, is there any difference between psychotherapy and ruqyah? That was his question. But if I can get the questions clearly, psychotherapy happens, ruqyah happens to be one of the example, one of the methods, because it happens to be based on Quranic recitation. Quranic recitation, ruqyah, whenever a person feels like he is engaging himself in one form of emotional distress, that he tried to pretend as if he's trying to experiencing a jinn or something like that, whenever Quranic recitation has been done to him, there is tendency for him to wake up. So Quranic recitation is also, ruqyah is an example of Quranic recitation. Quranic psychotherapy happens to be the umbrella, while ruqyah happens to be one of the branches that was covered by, by psychotherapy. So also with regards to the question that asked, with regard to the issue of nafsiyah, ruhiyah, and jismiyah, yes, the body, the composition of man has been divided into three. I said that the jismiyah is the biological and the physical organ of human device. Anything biological that is physical organ of human device that can be used to sense feelings, to sense sexual pleasure, to sense something sweet or taste, happens to be based on the biological physical organ, while nafsiyah has to do with the overall quality of human thought, which can be seen with regards to the issue of thought, feeling, and well-being of an individual. It has to do with the thought, feeling of an individual, while the ruhiyah aspect constitute of the human mind, the content, something that is metaphysics, based on the earlier definition, something that your mind motivated you, that motivated an individual to go and do, happens to be based on the ego and super ego. This happens to be the constitute of human ruhiyah aspect of an individual. And with regard to the role that was played by psychologists toward the present security challenge that Nigeria is experiencing, if the questioner has joined me from the time when I start my presentation, there are some statistical indices that I provided which clearly showcase that the number of criminal activities that we're experiencing presently in our society is increasing in geometric progression. And this increase happens to be because of the failure of conventional psychology, the psychotherapy telling that the conventional psychology has failed to salvage man from the problem. And the effort that Islamic psychologists are doing now is based on this method, based on this dhikr, Quranic recitation, and prayer. Then if to say individuals are going to engage themselves in doing this, there are a number of criminal activities, particularly with regard to the role of security cells. Because a person will be good for himself, then how can you be good of yourself? Then how can you go and kill somebody? How can you go and commit a crime? Because you have already remembered that if you do something to somebody, it's as if you are doing it for yourself. Then I see no reason, if Islamic psychology as now will continue to propagate the entire development, the entire promotion of human personality, if it really been effective, then there is tendency for all the security talent that is experiencing us at now in Nigeria to become a history. I think these are the only three questions that was asked, and in case I know the moderator have something to chip in, I will hand you over now, the moderator, so that he can take over.
So thank you so much, Malam Mustafa. There is a contribution from about the conversion of this paper into an article or even a book. That one, I know the presenter will take care of that. And let me say something about the roles the psychology plays in combating or containing insecurity in this country. You know, in some other climes, especially in the Western world, since early 1930s and 40s, any recruitment to the army or to the national or to the police, the candidate must have passed through various psychological tests. After the physical test, after the test for physiological health, then the person has to pass through psychological tests for all the military and paramilitary employments. Now, when we are back here, discussions have been are now on about the reasons, the actual causes, the etiologies of our current situation as far as our insecurity, our drugs abuse or substance use disorder is concerned, and the issues that have to link our current level of instability in the country. And then Islamically, the Islamic psychologists are moving a little bit farther or even faster than the conventional psychology in trying to see what are the issues, what are the causes, and how are we going to, in the long term or in the long run, find a lasting solution. Starting from our homes, the family life, discussions have been made about what an ideal family, what an ideal Muslim home should be, and what are the kinds of psychological assistance and attachments are we going to provide for our children, so that at the end of the day, they may not be carried away by others that have not, by other cultures and identities that may bring insecurity into our society. So starting from there, the issue of parenting, the issue of attachment to children, the issues of reducing or at least curtailing the incessant divorce, which usually brings about broken homes and family separation and segregation and all those things that are happening. So starting from there, then moving ahead from the family into the outer society. Of course, the family makes families makes the society. But moving on to the outer society, the psychologists are looking at, as just enumerated or suggested by Dr. Robo, who is also working on issues of the mental health, especially the genes aspect of it. There are issues about, if you can, some of us that may remember in the past 10, 15, 20 years ago, you can see that there are issues of this emotion contagion. There's in primary, secondary schools, mostly boarding secondary schools or even less secondary school, this issue of genes, aljanu, and all those things. But we can see that as time is going on, we have seen the reduction of manifestations of genes, and therefore a reduction of even the center of Rukia centers within the town and the cities. But we have seen an increase in issues like lesbianism, issues of drug abuse for girls and for boys. Then some of us are looking at what is the issue, what is the matter there. That thing is reducing and something here is increasing. What is the relationship between the two, and what are we going to do to end to find a solution? Because substance abuse, even among the boys and girls, is a way by which this type of insecurity is increasing. So inshallah, the Islamic psychology or Islamic Muslim psychologists in particular are trying to do something that will actually curtail this insecurity in a medium term, and most importantly in the long run. Now, I also urge, as suggested by one of the participants, that we should be looking at areas that have to do with our society in particular, especially as to the issues about what brings mental issues, stressful life events among ourselves and our families, then these emotional instabilities, these issues of mob psychology, and all those things that we Muslim psychologists will inshallah be focusing our attention on. Now, let me hand over to our mentor, Dr. Dukawa, who is going to provide vote of thanks, and then we close he will close with prayers. Thank you so much. Dr. Dukawa.
Naam, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can you unmute? Can you put me on camera?
Yes, sir, your camera is on.
Mr. Moderator?
Sir?
Yes, can you put me on? All right. Maybe it's from my end. No, it has to be from your side.
Okay.
Because I cannot, Dr. Nabil or any of the co-hosts. Any case, Alhamdulillah, hamdan kathiran tayyiban mubarakan fi. I can do without the camera. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, please, before the vote of thanks, I want to top up on what the moderator says or what he said about in response to the question on what Muslim psychologists are doing in containing insecurity in Nigeria. I will advise the questioner to rather look for what role that Islamic psychology plays, not Islamic psychologists. This is because of the holistic nature of Islam, that many things are condensed in one thing, and in every aspect of ibadat, and sometimes even in mu'amalat, you can see aspects of psychology and the benefit of it to whatever challenges that the society is facing. And in that regard, in addition to what the presenter and the moderator have said regarding the role that Islamic psychology is playing in terms of containing insecurity, I will add that the daily du'at, that is the prayers which Muslims do individually and in groups, are part of the role played by Islamic psychology in reducing incidences of insecurity and in addressing same. The weekly khutbah, which imams do, the weekly sermons during Friday prayers, are full of psychotherapy, and they play a great deal of role. That if only you can only imagine what would have happened without those kind of sermons that are being delivered on weekly basis, reminding Muslims of their responsibilities to God and to man. There are also professional writings and sensitization activities, particularly in the media. Hardly does a day passes without you hearing people discussing psychoanalysis in one radio station or another. We can also see the inverse relationship between criminality and religiosity. That is to say, most of these people that are caught in the act of criminality, you will see that they have next to zero religious tutoring or religious practice. You can see some people were asked whether they pray. They say they don't pray. Whether they have attended an Islamic school, no. Sometimes even the conventional schools, whether they have attended, no. So there is this inverse relationship that if you are looking for solutions to criminality generally, of which insecurity is a byproduct, you need to inject religious tutoring in our educational curriculum. And I think that is what I can top up on that concerns raised by a participant. And on a general note, regarding the presentation, I will draw the attention of the participants to a recently published book by Professor Ibrahim Duba, which he titled The Social Science of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Actionable Strategies